Happy Saturday, everyone. Hoping out there is enjoying your Thanksgiving weekend. We're going to break down the weather pattern for you over the next 7 days. Let's take a look at the temperature anomalies this morning on the North American view. And the predominant flow in the week ahead is going to be more of a cross-polar flow, a northwest flow type of setup. That means colder air comes out of Alaska that dives into British Columbia all the way through the Great Lakes and eventually ends up into the Ohio Valley, those areas into the Northeast and further south into the Carolinas. And eventually that actually dips all the way down into the Southeast, even into Florida. If you live on the West Coast, you're going to be starting to dry out and warm up in a big way throughout the week. And if you live in part of the middle part of the country, you're kind of like in the just in the average zone, I guess, more or less. Eventually the ridge will start to take over and you'll start to heat up, especially by middle of the week. But let's look at the satellite view this morning. You can see what's happening. We do have that another little clipper system that will be coming down. That's going to bring some snow this morning flying in the Kansas City region back into Missouri. That's eventually likely going to be swinging through Kentucky tonight through West Virginia. But notice the Great Lakes, man, the lake effect snow is on full effect. I mean, some of these areas have picked up over 2, almost 3 feet of snow so far, and that's not stopping anytime soon. In fact, they went ahead and extended some of the lake effect snow warnings out there all the way till Tuesday. But notice further south down in the Caribbean, this is your last day of fall heading into meteorologically winter. That means this is the end, the official end to hurricane season. So yeah, over the next 7 days, the National Weather Service not forecasting anything. So this is a great sign to steam that we can finally put an end to hurricane season. And so here's the breakdown of what unfolded for your 2024 hurricane season. We did, in fact, have 18 named storms. 11 of those were hurricanes. And unfortunately, 5 of those made U.S. landfall. So we started off the season with Beryl with very intense, in fact, Category 5 storm down there in the Atlantic, maxed out 165 miles an hour very early on in the season, actually one of the earliest on records. And then we had Debbie that made landfall into Florida. And then eventually we ended up with Francine, which is also a major Francine with a Category 2 hurricane into Louisiana. And then, of course, the big ones was Helene that made landfall into Florida, that swung up into the Carolinas. It did all the devastation. I think last report had $120 billion in damage up there just from Helene alone. And then, of course, later in the season in October, we had Milton that also left devastating impacts to Florida that spawned 46 tornadoes with that storm into Florida. And that also caused about $85 billion worth of damage. So just those two alone were over $200 million in damage. And then we had Oscar. It didn't affect anybody, but that was a pretty unique storm because it was one of the smallest hurricanes on record. In fact, it was only 5 to 6 miles wide. So very unusual for just a small but mighty storm out there with Oscar. But we can finally put an end to at least this season of hurricane season and transfer into winter, right? So we do have some winter weather to talk about. Obviously, we got the Great Lakes with all the lake effect snow, what's happening up there, but we do have that clipper system with winter weather advisories for Kansas City, as well as into St. Louis, back into Louisville, that extends into the Charleston region. Notice the freeze warnings that did in fact dip all the way down into the panhandle of Florida. So that's where the snow is flying this morning in and around the Kansas City region. That's eventually swinging over into St. Louis. But there's the lake effect snow in full throttle coming off the lakes. I think Erie's checked in at 30 inches of snow. But notice the small gradient, right? Buffalo, I don't think you've actually received anything. Just south of the city, you got 2 feet. So that's the nature of the beast with this lake effect snow band, especially down up there in Watertown as well. So if we look at some of these right now, snowfall totals over the last 24 to 48 hours, yeah, some of these are fairly updated as of 9 a.m., checking in at 34 inches. If you notice further Further down the list, Erie's checking in at 30 inches, but the last update was in fact 9:30 last night. So, and then, like I mentioned, they did in fact extend the lake effect snow warnings all the way into Tuesday now. So this is only Saturday, folks. We've got a lot more snow on the table. In fact, Erie, Pennsylvania is calling for an additional 42 inches possible. That would put them at more or less 72 inches, would actually break the record from 2017 as 65 inches. And I show you what this actually looks like. Someone sent me this photo. Yeah, yesterday. This is in Erie, Pennsylvania, folks. This is what the scene was yesterday morning, and this is what the scene was this morning, right? So notice the huge difference with another 2 to 3 feet of snow that fell overnight, and that's not stopping anytime soon. So they're going to be adding to those totals. In fact, like I mentioned, 42 possible additional inches between now and Tuesday. Just an incredible lake effect snow event that's unfolding across the Northeast. But further south, there's the Clipper system. So as we get into this, about 1 o'clock this afternoon, the snow is going to be moving out of the Kansas City region, likely moving into Columbia, swinging over into St. Louis by then, with some of the, light to, if not moderate snow, heavy, snows at time. And then once we get into the evening time frame, this would likely extend into, say, the Evansville region, into the Louisville region, likely going to be clipping Cincinnati. You probably get at least something out of this deal, but not expecting too much. But further south, that band swings through Lexington and eventually swings over into the Pikeville area, and eventually into the overnight, eventually into West Virginia. So the latest update from the National Weather Service has these lake effect snow amounts again on full throttle, upwards to almost 45 additional inches in some of the higher spots. And then there's the Clipper system that will be coming down over the next 48 hours, with some snow pushing back into the area of the Dakotas. And then that's the snow that's swinging through Kansas City this morning, eventually swinging through Missouri, southern Illinois, Indiana, as well as into Kentucky, ends up in West Virginia. So some of these areas could pick up a dusting to 1, if not some 2 to 4 inch totals before it's all said and done between now and the next 24 hours. The high resolution guidance, especially on the lake effect, a little bit more bullish, right? So the National Weather Service is calling for 45 inches. The latest high resolution guidance is up to 64 inches. So, this is just an insane lake effect snow amounts. And yes, we're still going to be talking to this for days to come, because it doesn't look to be ending, anytime soon, as well as the cross polar flow is not going to end up anytime soon. As we start the month of December, heading into those meteorologically winter, it's going to be cold. If you're in that, green and the purple zone, obviously you're well below average for what you typically feel this time of year, but the ridge will be building out west. So as the deeper in the week we go, the further east this ridge will go as well. So this is Monday heading into early next week, and some of the temperatures by the time we get into say on Monday morning, yeah, all those areas that are in the red, you're talking 20s. I mean, in fact, 80% of the lower 48 would likely wake up to a freeze heading into your work week for next week. So yes, even some single digits further north into the Dakotas, back into portions of Iowa. But look at the temperatures even further south, back into Louisiana. That's why they do have some freeze warnings this morning, all the way down for the deep south. And that doesn't end, right? The cross-polar flow continues. In fact, you're likely going to be seeing some of the coldest temperatures you've seen so far, with more of a deep freeze happening for a good part of the southeast, and freeze warnings well into Florida by then as well. So the cold's not going to look to go away anytime soon, with still 80% of the country experiencing a freeze, especially for the central and eastern 2/3 of the U.S., and especially with that cross-polar flow continuing to set up. So yes, for the eastern 2/3, you're still going to remain on the much colder side. For the western states, you're going to remain on the much warmer side. for this time of year. So you got the ridge building up in Alaska, you've got it coming down the pike, and as it builds out west, it's finally going to be pushing those into those areas, say in Texas and Oklahoma, where those temperatures are going to start to creep back up. But that's more likely from the south wind that's likely going to come back, because we do have a disturbance that's going to be coming down from the deep south, and we'll have yet another little area of low pressure center that will dive into the Great Lakes and enhance their snow amounts as we head into Wednesday. So if we look at the surface map, you can see what's happening here. Yeah, again, pretty dry across the west in the middle part of the country. It's only this disturbance that tries, gets closer on shore into deep South Texas, into Southeast Texas, some areas into maybe Central Texas. I think North Texas gets clipped from the system, as though we'll have more snow coming through the Great Lakes, and eventually that snow is going to end up into the Northeast on your Thursday. So for your Thursday, it kind of looks like this. You have that disturbance that's still moving in from the south. It probably puts a stop, further north, and gets squeezed pushing east. So for those areas down into Southeast Texas, into Louisiana, areas into central and southern portions of Arkansas, will likely get some rain by Wednesday into Thursday. And that rain pushes into Mississippi, back into the Alabama region, where the snow will start to continue to fly up there into Pennsylvania. Not lake effect snow this time. This is an area of low pressure that will be entering that area into the Northeast heading into Thursday. So now we're talking into Massachusetts, likely into areas into Connecticut, maybe even Rhode Island. We'll start seeing some snow from this system that will likely moving through into Wednesday into Thursday. But the lake effect's still going to be in effect, so I don't think that goes away literally anytime soon. Probably the lake effect warnings would likely go away, but you're still going to get some lake effect with that cross-polar flow, the northwest flow type setup, as most of the precipitation stays well to the south along into the deep south. So if we break it down as far as temperatures over the next 7 days, the cross-polar flow is not going away. So if you're locked into this zone where you're experiencing the colder anomalies now, you're likely going to still continue for that all week long as the colder air continues to funnel in from the northwest, as the ridge will start to build out west. The deeper we get into the week, the further east it will go. So more or less the middle part of the country will be overall just average temperatures if you break it down from over the next 7 days. But it's going to be dry, folks. This is overall a kind of a drier pattern. This is precipitation over the next 7 days, right? So there's not much rain happening for a good part of the West, really even in the Intermountain West, much of the desert Southwest, much of the Intermountain West. For those areas into the central U.S., it's just that little disturbance that will likely get its act together and push inland on Wednesday, heading into Thursday, spreading into South Texas, portions of central Texas, but especially into East Texas, Louisiana, Arkansas, back into Mississippi, and then lighter amounts as you swing further into Alabama, back into Georgia, through the Carolinas. And this is that clipper system that comes through. And of course, the lake effect snow will be on full throttle. So if we look at the snow amounts over the next 7 days, you have the clipper system that comes through, right? That's happening now and into tomorrow. And then of course the Great Lakes will just get crushed with all the lake effect snow that's happening across that region. And then we have that system that comes through on Wednesday and Thursday of next week that will leave some of these areas leaving a little bit higher snow amounts than what they're seeing, as of currently right now. So guys, I appreciate you guys watching. Do like this video, definitely hit the subscribe button, and catch the next update while I protect you before and after the storm.